work exclusively with betrayed adults, male and female, and a common theme throughout the years of doing this work is how common it is that body image issues, toxic comparisons all the way to very severe eating disorders, comes up in this work.
Partner betrayal is disorienting, heartbreaking, and results in absolute confusion for the betrayed partner. You worry that nothing in your life was real, and you fear that you will never be able to trust your spouse or yourself again. Well, welcome to the Rebuilding Trust podcast with Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, aka Carol the Coach, and what I can promise is that when you listen to my podcast, you'll begin to believe that there is hope. We will be hearing from experts all over the world who specialize in problematic sexual behavior, sex addiction, and infidelity. Together, we will be asking them the hard questions about how you both can rebuild safety, find strengths, grieve and mourn what you had, what you never had, and what you fear you will never find again. The truth is that rebuilding trust is possible, and I am going to show you the steps to working together to build a whole new marriage based on the honesty, authenticity, and transparency that your marriage deserves. Rebuilding Trust with Carol the Coach.
Well, I don't really need much of an introduction for Dr. Jill Manning. She is pervasive in this field for working with partners and from a very partner-sensitive approach. And I'll have to admit, I was so envious of your article in Oprah with Dr. Kevin Skinner talking about partner betrayal. I mean, what an opportunity for you both, and yet you work so hard at it through research, right?
Yes, and that was several years ago, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I haven't thought about that for some time. It really was a tremendous honor to, be in that kind of a forum. But I was so grateful that that issue was being exposed to such a large audience, and that really brought me joy, just to the languaging of betrayal trauma and getting exposure to this issue and helping people just know what this is and how to cope was really the best part of that.
Yeah, and so Jill, you have produced so many resources for partners, and they're so helpful because they create that sense of mindfulness, they create a sense of control, and you've undertaken a whole new genre with body image and how partner betrayal affects one's sense of self and one's sense of body. What made you go into that field? I mean, that specific niche?
Well, it's not certainly the focus of all of my therapy work, but what I've noticed, I work exclusively with betrayed adults, male and female, mostly female, but I do work with men as well. And a common theme throughout the years of doing this work is how common it is that body image issues, from toxic comparisons all the way to very severe eating disorders, comes up in this work. And I think I have not seen body image and betrayal be given a lot of attention. And yet it's this common thread that so often comes up. And so I felt motivated in this last year to address that. And as I brainstormed what would be the most effective way to address or invite change in that area, I felt right about creating journal prompts, because I thought it's not my place to tell anyone else how to view their body, but I wanted to invite compassionate, safe space through the power of questions. And that's what good therapy does, right? It creates space for people to reflect and connect or think differently. So I created a digital download that has, I think there's roughly 53, more than 50 journal prompts that ask what I hope are thought-provoking questions for people to consider and reflect, maybe bring into their therapy or discuss with a sponsor, or just even in their own reflections to unpack this topic. It's so pervasive, and yet we're often so isolated in how we're relating to our own bodies. So I thought journal prompts would be a respectful and honoring way to just get people thinking about this differently.
Yes, inherently, I think it's a problem for all women and many, many men. You're right. I just made a referral to your resources for a group of people that said that they had a male who was really struggling with his body image since he had been betrayed. And I said, well, you've got to see these resources that Dr. Jill Manning has created. And her website, by the way, I believe is www.drjillmanning.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Uh-huh. And so I appreciate the fact that you recognize that in people in general, and then betrayal specifically affects one's sense of self, um, whether it has to do with affairs, prostitutes, pornography. Um, my experience is that once a partner realizes that the betrayer found something else to look at that was more stimulating or more arousing, it absolutely makes him or her question everything about her own body. What's your experience?
Well, there's a lot we need and can say about that question that you just posed. But I think an appropriate starting point is just break down the effect that betrayal and trauma have on the body, because that phrase betrayal trauma, which is appropriate, but they both hold some clues as to why body image is impacted. So if we start with trauma, one of the key impacts of trauma is that it severs a healthy connection between the mind and the body, right? The mind is either sucked into the future, worrying, future tripping, or sucked into the past, replaying and looping what has happened and that they're trying to make sense of. And so a lot of the trauma treatments and healing work is helping the body and the mind get into the same place at the same time, right? And be in the present moment in a non judgmental way. We often call that mindfulness.
Uh-huh.
And so think of with betrayal, we have this disconnection between the mind and the body. But with betrayal specifically, if we look at that as a unique impact, with betrayal, that's we've been our trust has been violated by someone that we are deeply connected to or attached. This is our person. And we feel chosen, or we chose our person.
Mhm.
So when that person that we've chosen and feel chosen by turns outside of the relationship to look at or engage with someone or many people, there's a deep severing of the sense of being chosen. So now we have a disconnection between mind and body and a severing of the felt sense of being chosen. We now feel not only not chosen, unchosen, but also compared. So when you put all of that together, this becomes a crisis of our identity, our worth, and just our own experience of ourselves. So my big concern with when these two come together, betrayal and trauma, there's often what I've experienced. I'd be interested to know your experience as well, Carol, an abandonment of that body that's pretty alarming at times. Now, I want to give a very brief example. I met with someone this week at my office. She, in the last year, has discovered betrayal. She's understandably very traumatized and overwhelmed by this, struggling to make sense of it. And as I sat with her, I noticed her hands were shaky. Her face was tense. At times she was tearful. And I just, as I stepped back, thought, if I just objectively look at her body, this is a body under a lot of strain. And yet she's working full time. She's managing a household and children. She's isolated from friends and family who she doesn't know how to begin to communicate this betrayal with. And isolation, we know, is a common experience with this. So people start becoming in their own echo chamber with these thoughts and feelings and distress. And I just thought, who is showing up for this body? You know,
Mhm.
she's now criticizing her body, believing that if she'd looked a different way, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And yet her body is performing so many incredible functions every day for her. The body's not
Hmm.
sleeping. So this body is really being tortured in many ways. And I felt a lot of compassion. I know I'm sounding like I'm objectifying her, and I'm not intending to. I'm trying to make the point, if we just really look at the body as a separate entity, I and just stop for a moment and have compassion for how much the body of someone going through betrayal is experiencing. And they're getting hit from all sides. They've been betrayed by their person, so that person, at least they don't experience that person looking out for them and honoring their spirit, mind, or body. But they also abandon in the comparisons and lack of self-care often. So my my focusing on this topic, Carol, is really an invitation for us to restore some compassion and humanity to bodies generally that do so much for us every day, and that I think really get kicked to the curb when these crises occur in our lives where no one's taking care of the body.
Well, I know, and we both know that, you know, women in general can experience a whole host of trauma as they grow up. And, perhaps they've been molested, perhaps their bodies have been made fun of, perhaps their own mothers or fathers have negated their bodies. And you take that baggage and then you add to the baggage of what it's like when you feel like the betrayer doesn't like your body and who you are. And it really feeds into kind of a complex post-traumatic stress. And I know that in my work with women and body image, um, we have them talk about where the wounds are and how did they occur, and then we have them shift to how they've gotten stronger as a result of some of those wounds. And when betrayal happens, that shock, that disbelief, that need for safety is first and foremost. But when we can really work with a woman, and as you said, mindfulness is the number one tool to be gentle with themselves and have self compassion and recognize how the body has assisted them in their life, regardless of someone's criteria or speculation or negativity. Um, it can really give them pause and see their bodies differently. And that's what I saw with your materials, is that you have these downloads that have women, but this is helpful for men too. You have people that can explore how they might begin to see their body differently, right? See it as a resource, see it as a strength.
Correct. And to also reconnect with a more functional experience of the body rather than appearance or performative experience of the body. The average adult in the United States right now is spending 7 hours, 2 minutes a day on social media, computers, online. I mean, we're not talking work related time. This is recreational, dare we say, time. 7 hours a day. I mean, we live in an unprecedented situation where the amount of exposure to others' bodies
Mhm.
and the naked body, it's unprecedented. Never before in history has there been a time where people have been this exposed to this many bodies so quickly. And it's unique. So I think it compounds this exposure and comparative culture that we have. And,
Mhm.
so what you were mentioning with some of the questions in the journal prompt digital download, one of the questions early on, question number 6, I want to read it. It says, describe a time when you felt comfortable and at peace with your body. For example, as a child, do you recall swimming or engaging in a physical activity freely and joyfully without worrying about your body? What contributed to that positive internal experience? And my purpose in asking that question is to help people go way back to a time before all those comparisons and the awkwardness and awareness that their body is
Uh-huh.
different than others. And often when I've asked people that question in person, like in a session, or reflected on it myself, they'll say, I remember swimming or running through the sprinkler, and just the sheer joy and thrill of doing that and being just so embodied and present with that, not caring a bit what so and so or so and so thought or how my body or swimsuit measured up. It's just, it's about middle school, early middle school or tweens. There's this whole social awareness and lens through which we start seeing our own bodies and others' bodies. And I think that's compounded with the pornified culture we live in, where it's no longer just comparison, it's with a pornified lens as well that we are analyzing and dissecting. And I really encourage women, especially, but men as well, to protest that, to reject that, to reject that lens. And the reason why I zoom in on women, especially, Carol, is we know from research that men and women, when they're exposed to pornography over time or sexualized images of the body, both men and women will objectify the female body more. So the female body is particularly, it's like a double whammy. They're getting hit with these toxic, unhealthy standards and expectations and lens from both men and women. And so I just really want to invite people to challenge that. Think about that. What's the effect of that? What are we modeling to younger children, male and female?
Well, we've seen that so often when mothers realize because of their own discomfort with their body, what they have modeled for their own children. And then there's that layer of guilt because they don't want to impose that on their children like it had been imposed frequently on themselves. Um, yeah, and I agree with you, Jill. I mean, the sexualization that occurs in today's world is we need to screen and filter that out to the best of our ability. And that may mean turning off a show that looked like it had some merit, but when women are objectifying themselves or being objectified and are glamorizing that part of their body that so many people sexualize, it's just not healthy for us.
No,
We have to we have to take care of our what we put in our brain.
I couldn't agree more. And recently, I have some involvement with teenagers. I teach a class for adolescents, and I was recently talking to a small group of teenage girls in late high school, and I asked one of them the question, "Do you know how beautiful you are?" I mean, like I thought that this person's just objectively a very beautiful person inside and out. And so I wanted to know, does she have a felt sense of that? Does she think she's beautiful? And her answer stopped me cold because she said, "Yeah, I think I look okay, but I'm not porn pretty."
Hmm. Wow.
I thought, wow, what does that mean? I really leaned in. Tell me what you mean by that. And so this whole discussion ensued where, does she want to look porn pretty? What does that mean? She said, "No, I don't want to look porn pretty. I don't like that look." But that's what all the guys at school go for. If you're not
Hmm.
porn pretty, right, you're not garnering the attention of males. And I think this really, I mean, this is a whole other subject, I realize, but I'm highlighting this because the impact of our hypersexualized, pornified culture, nonstop inundation, unless we choose to really be mindful and be the manager of media in our life rather than being managed by it. It's not to be understated. This is a big deal. And so it's affecting adults and our young people. And just, yeah, I want to challenge and invite people to pause and really think through what is the impact of this on ourselves, on our relationships, and on our youth.
Well, I really feel the passion and the compassion of you wanting to help women change the way they think about themselves and to know, as you just said, that a betrayer's arousal template was developed way before he ever met her. And I just thank you so much. These resources are so good. I want to remind everybody to go to drjillmanning.com to take a look at much of her free stuff, and then these new downloads that are really amazing. Again, they are, and I'll just describe, they are body image journal prompts, a self-reflective exercise for those healing from betrayal. And I want to come back to this topic again. We have to end, but Dr. Jill, your compassion for women is just, it's just so joyful to know that they have you out there to advocate for them.